I'm Jordan.
And I'm Rosanna.
And on this podcast, we explore how to take life off autopilot
and relentlessly pursue a life worth living together.
Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of The Relentless Pursuit. And in this episode, we're excited to present you with our very first interview.
It was a fun one, that's for sure.
It was.
So part of the reason why we started Relentless Pursuit was to just learn and grow as a couple while hustling hard after our passions. And so we thought a great way to be able to do that, besides just having conversations that are pretty intentional with each other, is to kind of bring other people in to learn from them, and even to almost find mentors along the way of who we could be more like in certain ways and what we can glean from them. So that's kind of the point of the interview. So we interviewed a couple that we know a little bit. We didn't really know them very well, but we spent some time together the other night and were able to share a meal and a glass of wine together and dig deep and then do an interview after, and it was really great.
Yeah. So the couple is Leo and Melisa Spizzirri. And Leo Spizzirri is a pizzaiolo. I think I said that right.
I think so. I think that's pretty good.
And he's a master pizza maker. And there's very few people who have been trained at his level of pizza mastery. Right now, he teaches over at the North American Pizza and Culinary Institute in Lisle, Illinois. And there are only 2 of these kinds of institutes in the United States, and only a handful more in the world. He trained under masters in Italy, and is the guy when it comes to pizza. He's prolific on YouTube, and you can learn a ton from him directly about pizza and about a lot of other really fascinating things that you might be interested in trying out.
And then he's married to Melisa, who is by far the most warm and infectious personality that I've met in a long time. And while Leo may be a master pizza maker, an artisan, she is a master in her own industry. She is a master in the salon industry. She's been working at the same salon for 24 years, and not only is she a master stylist, but she is an educator. And one thing I found really great about both of them is how much they're into not only having their own passion and pursuing it, but sharing their love in their industry with other people.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that fascinated us during this conversation, and you'll hear more about what they see as valuable in both being able to teach others, but also what they've learned from others and the mentors that they've had along the way. Some other things to listen for are how they tend to reflect on their own performances, and they use reflection to grow. They also talk about their ways of connecting with other people. You'll listen to some fascinating takes on how they support one another and facilitate family and facilitate marriage and love alongside supporting one another's independent careers. And you're going to learn a lot about pizza as well.
A lot about pizza.
So we present you with Leo and Melisa Spizzirri. We hope you enjoy.
Enjoy.
Tell us a little bit about yourselves, both who you are as a couple, a little bit of your background, and just kind of what you do with yourselves nowadays.
You want me to go first?
Sure. You want to go first.
You can go.
No, go ahead.
My name is Leo Spizzirri. I'm currently the co-founder and master instructor of the North American Pizza and Culinary Academy here in Chicago. I've been making pizzas all my life. I've really taken an interest in baking and decided to pursue it as a career. It's given me a lot of opportunities along the way to meet a lot of really interesting people, give me a lot of really interesting experiences, and through the experiences that I've gained throughout the years, it's given me the ability to open up a school which is the first of its kind in the United States, as far as the first accredited pizza school in the U.S., and to have students come from all over the world to learn and understand the methods that I'm teaching. It's a really humbling experience.
My turn?
Go ahead.
All you.
My name is Melisa Spizzirri, and we're married, obviously. Thanks. I'm a hairdresser, and I work at a salon. I've worked there for almost 25 years. And we have a family together, obviously, and so I feel like I have many jobs, but both of our main job is our family first, and then our careers. And we both have really big careers, and my career kind of expands all through my life, family, friends. It's not just really doing hair, but being involved in all different areas.
I think that's one thing that interested me in just learning a little bit more about you before sitting down tonight is I think a lot of people can say, all right, I do hair, but I don't think you frame it that way. You see it as more than just that.
I think most people have a kind of mixed up view of a hairdresser. They think like, oh, it's just doing hair. Mm-hmm. But hairdressers are like a rare breed that just, I don't know, exude into all parts of life in all different areas all the time, you know.
Mm-hmm. I think she's being really humble because from what she does, you know, obviously she does hair for a living.
Wine.
But she's
usually it doesn't make people humble. That's good.
She's also, you know, she's an educator. So she's teaching. They've got a mentor program. So she's teaching new hairdressers that come into the game how to be better hairdressers. The people that I hear stories about, you know, at night we sit down after dinner, have a glass of wine, and just talk about our days. You know, to say that, you know, a hairdresser is like a psychiatrist and has to listen to everybody's problems all day long. Like, for me, I would never be able to do it. I have enough of my own problems than to let alone to listen to everybody else's. Like,
I feel a little bit bad for Leo in the time of, not for anything else, but in the time of the pandemic here, in this time that we're in. I'm used to going to work all day, talking all day, doing my thing all day, and I have like 25 people to talk to all day. Now it's like him.
It's like opening a bottle of champagne, you know, like pop, everything comes out.
Worked up for so long.
Yeah, so, you know, he's been a good quarantine partner.
There you go.
I'm glad to hear that.
Well, it's funny that you say that about being, and I've heard that about like hairstylists. They're like therapists. They're like your friend. They're mentors. They usually clients stay with you for a long time, so you know like their history and their background. Just even with my work, same thing. I've had clients for the last 6 years, and the things that they like tell me, confide in me, like they have a question like unrelated to an event, like they'll call me and be like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing with my kids. Like, what would you do in this situation?" It's interesting, like the relationship that you build with people over a long time. That it's not just what you're doing for them; it's like who they see you as and who you come to know them as, and like how they rely on you, like over the years.
But I don't think that's true with everybody. Like I think like a lot of people who will do hair will say like, well, yeah, that's what I do. I'm a hairdresser, and that's kind of what it is. Like, but I think you see the opportunity that's there to connect with people. Maybe I mean it strikes me as a little bit more than what maybe a typical kind of hairdresser or stylist might see.
Yeah, hairdressing. First of all, I work for a company that is in the top 2% of all hair salons in probably the world. Multiple locations, and I've worked there so long that I've been married. I've worked there longer than I've been married to Leo, longer than my first marriage. So it's like kind of being married to something, you know. Yeah. But the level in which I work is much higher than, say, your average hairdresser. But you're totally right. It's, I would say probably, and this is probably surprising, but like 25% hair and 75% connecting with people.
Wow. So what are your secrets for connecting with people? Like, so someone sits down, what are your kind of steps to take during that conversation to get to that 75%?
You know, in my company right now, who I work for, they're trying to get me to break this down. Into a breakdown so other people could understand it, because I'm just going to say I think it's a God-given gift.
It's like more of an art than a science.
To be able to connect with people. Leo has it. I have it.
I don't think I have it anywhere near like
you two seem to have it, though. You know, it's a thing.
No, it takes something very special, Dick. She can sit down in front of anybody, and within, I'm not exaggerating, within 10 minutes, she'll have her hands in their hair and be like, oh, so what kind of product do you use, or what is this? And like you make a connection so quickly that people just start to open up. And
Here's the tool for me to connect with people many times. You know, I don't have to use hair, but it's mostly what I do. But it's a hard thing to break. What you just said. How do you get to that point? I think it's sort of just in you, and if people could take away a little bit of it, that's good. But it's something that takes a long time to sort of grow into, but you just kind of have to have it inside you at the very beginning.
That desire to connect.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think that it's like you've done a service for them, and it's not like you've got your claws in them, right? But
Right.
At some point, it's like you've pulled them enough that they're yours, you know, that you've gained that loyalty within an hour service. And you've gained loyalty for how many customers that you've got for over 20 years. And I think that's not an easy thing to do. And I think that's one of the things that comes out. She's always the kind of person that is constantly putting everybody before herself. And when people hear you talk like that, you know, when we're talking genuine to somebody else, that really resonates deep. Strong, you know, and I think that's why. I mean, if she could literally be on the phone all day long, if it's a text or a phone call or social media, and it's always got something to do with either they're talking about their hair, someone just had a baby, right, or whatever it might be. But again, I think it's just that you got that personality that people are just charmed and they feel comfortable and they always want to be around you.
Have you ever had someone be like, "Wow, I can't believe I just told you that"?
Oh, God, every day. Every day. I think people are like, listen, you don't know anyone I know, right? Because, yeah, that happens. I mean, it's like definitely like a bartender or something. People confide in you a lot.
That's a good analogy. I think to say that, you know, a hairstylist and a bartender are probably very close or similar.
I would say
feel
like
like
a bartender
iconic.
at Gibson's, though, you know.
An upscale bartender.
Yeah. So I feel like iconic occupations where, they're
Not at Moe's down the street, right?
Listen, I could relate with Moe's or Gibson's. That's kind of that's why we both kind of do what we do. We're not judgmental. We could sit anywhere, any place we've ever been, and have people get attracted. I think that's sort of the law of attraction. People get attracted to our personalities, even though he says that he doesn't have that. He does. And people constantly want to know about both of us and what we're doing and why we're doing it and how do you do that. So I just think it's kind of human nature.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I read on your bio, like it said in there, like I want to connect with as many people as possible in and outside of my industry, and I hope to learn and grow as much as I can. And I loved that because I think that's something that genuinely interests us, that we love to like just learn about people, like people who are completely different than us, just like a different perspective, and just kind of like listen and understand and like see what we can take from that, or see like, you know, how we're similar to people. I think a lot of times people are always so focused on how they're different. And we're always looking for like, gosh, you know, they're just like us. They might be completely different, but to the core, like, they're good people who want to do good things or big things. And, you know, that like inspires us and motivates us to kind of, you know, continue to do what we want. So I love that you had written that. Like, I thought that was so cool.
That's not an easy thing either, though. I think that's one of the things that we see it a lot. People might, you know, whatever. People come and go. I think that's the best thing to say. People come and go. And the one thing that, like, the people who stay around are like your true friends. We talk about that. And we don't have a lot of friends just because of what we do. We don't have a lot of time to have all these people. We'll do a lot with our family. But I think that there's a lot of people that easily get jealous, you know, and I think that in our careers, you know, where you're doing things at a certain level, you know, it's great to say, yeah, you outperform somebody. But I think that also is an easy way to throw a lot of daggers as well. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's like, yeah, you're picking out faults or you're picking out things because there's nothing else to pick out. Mm-hmm. And we see that a lot too. And sometimes it never gets to that point where we hear it, you know, but then sometimes like you get that, you feel it, you know. And
right.
That's funny in the bio. I didn't even know you had a bio.
Yeah, it's out there.
You know.
That's cool.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed with both of you is that there's a big like educator role in what you do. So it's you're not just like, you know, kind of creating something or you know, providing a service, but you're really like training others to take on the skills and experiences that you've acquired over the years too?
When you work at a level that we do, being in the top of our game, you don't get there by I've learned from others, he's learned from others, and we both keep we have like a mental log of who are our mentors and who we've worked under and who we've watched all of the years that we've been working. And you don't get to the level that we're at if you have a passion for what you're doing and you really love what you do. You want to share it. All along the way, your mistakes, what you know, what you don't know. And I think that's how we've both become better, by not only learning from others, but then teaching everything we know. Mm-hmm. A lot of people like to hold that in. They think it's like, oh, I can't share that because then someone else will get better than me, where you just keep getting better and better and better because you share it with anyone who will listen.
I see that too, even though, like I said, we're talking about two different industries, cutting hair and the restaurant world or the food service world. Even for me, I've heard that a lot over the years. And I remember when I first really started teaching, before I even had a school, I was doing a lot of consulting work. And I had a lot of criticism by a lot of guys that I considered mentors. Like, I can't believe you're giving away all these secrets. And it's like, I don't understand.
Why would you tell them that?
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, but I don't understand secrets. And I used to say, it's pretty stupid looking back at it now, but maybe it's just, you talk about being older and wiser. And not that I'm an old man by any means, but sometimes, I can remember as I was younger and I had, kids and, whatever, your kids are little. And I remember saying things like, well, I never had a boy. I got 3 little girls at home, and I never had a boy, so I don't have anybody to pass this down to. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's like, all right, the whole world is going to be my little boy that I want to see grow. But then thinking about it, I've got a little girl, 7 years old. Jada, I'll tell you what, is 10 times more than any boy that I've ever seen. And, to see her, get side by side, or her to challenge me or question me, I think that's when it first became really obvious to me that, look, I've got all this knowledge, and at some point I'm going to be in a box, and all that's going to go with me. So unless I share it, it's going to be gone. So what did I go through this whole journey for? And I think that's, again, what pushes me as much as I do. Mm-hmm. And that's a pretty big thing, because still to this day, I mean, you think we're 2020, right? This is not something that we're talking about as we're reinventing the wheel. I'm talking about baking. And I didn't even know this, because I remember the first time, I've got a lot of national sponsors, right? I'm on a pizza team, and I'm very visible in our industry. And I had my very first national sponsor was an oven company, and I'll never forget it. And they're like, you do a really cool thing when you talk about pizza. You have a way of talking about it that no matter who's in front of you, they understand what you do. And maybe it's almost like you're telling a story, and you're telling it at such a granular level that they pick it up. Would you ever consider writing a blog for us? And we're going back 10 years. And I'm like, what is a blog? Right? And then, exactly. And they're like, well, do you ever sit down and write? And I'm like, no. I'm like, I know how to write, and everything. Again, that persona, I know how to write. And we're sitting talking. They're like, well, write exactly the way it would come out of your mouth. And that was the first time that really, I'm sitting there, and I tried writing the first one, and it sucked. It was horrible. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking at this afterwards, and I went back and I gave it to the guy who told me. He was a COO of a company. And he's like, I'm reading this. He goes, this is not you. I could get this from anywhere, but this is not you. I want you literally, as you're explaining something, to type it. And I made another version of it, and he's like, this is exactly it. And that really, I think, was that turning point when it's like, yeah, maybe I never went to college, and I don't have a degree in literature or anything like that, right? Mm-hmm. But I know how to bake. I know how to be myself, right? And people understand sometimes when I talk that they can grasp it pretty easily. So that was really the first point that, for me, it was like, I can probably do this. And then people started showing up. And that was the first time when, I'll never forget, it wasn't one of the biggest pizza show of the year is in Las Vegas. And I went there, and this company, the oven company, is like, we want to put you on the stage, and we want you to talk for an hour. all right, I'll figure out fill an hour. The first time I'm up there, these guys aren't even stopping me, and I'm like, well, it's got to be an hour now, and I'm going and going. And I was up there for almost 2 hours. But the thing that everybody was like so grassed about,
my
your arms.
I hear that a lot. Actually, we got tripods now. But I think that was the first
You got bare
time.
arms. You're ready.
Like people started saying, like, look, you've got 200-300 people in front of you and nobody moved. Like that's something. Like there's something there. You got to figure out what you just did and keep going with it. And that's really, like I said, when all of a sudden we saw like the wall went down, I just started spewing everything I knew, and people just, again, it just more and more people started following.
It's very reassuring, like to give you confidence, be like, all right, like what I was just being me and talking about something that I love, and people listened, so I can keep doing that.
Well, anybody can make pizza.
Well,
but it's
I
make pizza and it's pretty good.
Anybody can make.
It's pretty good.
You're right.
But there's something special about you and the way that you do it and the way that you can communicate. So to find that niche of like something that you love, but being able to share it is more special than you making pizza and not sharing it with anybody.
Right. But then there's the other side of it. Like I'm my own worst enemy. And like anybody, like people who know me, like they're my, like the inner circle, like especially Melissa, will say like, the more you go and you tell me that you're going to suck and there's no way you're going to do this and you're going to be horrible today, and that's usually like the best that you could be. And like, again, it takes, not that I need to be reassured, but sometimes, and again, maybe this is just something in my personality, maybe in my head, I have to completely tear everything apart, because then when I'm in front of people, again, I think it's like fuel to the fire, you know? And again, it's just a weird thing that I go through in my head, and nobody sees it, nobody knows it, but there's even some preparation, before you're about to go in front of people.
Every year before the pizza show, which is like where he does the most, or kind of where he started doing live videos, he's like, I don't want to go, I'm not going to do this, this is going to be horrible. And I'm always like, yeah, whatever. Okay, I'll see you there, because it never fails that he's always able to just pull it off really well.
So does that help you like maybe weed out some of the weaker ways of communicating, or some of the flaws that you've noticed?
Yeah, like you do that? At first, like when you do stuff in front of people, like the most common criticism that you could hear is like, you said or
I say
There's a lot of
I say
and like that was the first thing. Like I remember, like literally, like I think I still do this all the time. Like I remember like watching a video of something I just shot, and before I'll even send it out for editing, I'll sit there and I'll watch that video 2-3 times, and like I'll critique myself.
I hear it constantly.
and but again, it's kind of like that process that I go through, and it's not that I'm critiquing what I did. It's all right, I know that the next time I'm in this situation, this is the way I'm going to go, because I didn't like the way it went this way, And I just think that every single time that I do it, it gets a little bit better. And again, to me, I'm still amazed that people show up, because I'm just, again, at the end of the day, I know I've got all these accolades, right? But at the end of the day, I'm just a poor pizza guy from Chicago. And, until about maybe, 12, 15 years ago, like who even knew about different styles of pizza outside of Chicago, and that there was all these styles, let alone in Italy. And then to say that I went to the oldest pizza school in Italy, which I remember like telling my family that, hey, I'm going to pizza school in Italy. And they're like, what? You're going to go to school in Italy for pizza? And like, yeah, not only am I going to be there, I'm going to be there for like months and months at a time. And all these things that I was doing, like I just remember, I never forget, my dad was a really, he was pretty tough, throughout my childhood and growing up. As far as like, my dad had that very strict Italian work ethic, and, no matter what we were doing, at the end of the day, the criticism from him would all be like, oh, don't worry, you always can go find a pick or a shovel. They're always looking for laborers, You'll always have a job there if this doesn't work out in school, because I hated school. And, when I told them that, I never forget, I was just getting ready to get out of high school, and looked at my parents, and I was like, I want to go to culinary school. And like literally to watch both of them crack up. Like, you didn't go to school and be good in school when it was like free. And now you want to spend like $20,000 a year to go to school? Like my mom was like, she was probably the best thing she could have ever done. It's like, you know what? You want to go to school? Go to school. We're not going to tell you to stop going to school. You still live here, whatever. We'll do your shit, do whatever you got to do. But you're going to figure out how you're going to pay for it, you know? And that was the first time. It's like, well, I don't have this kind of money, and I'm not going to be able to get student loans and all this other stuff. So I went to work. And it was that on the job and learning and all these great people that I learned from, you know, old school guys. You know, my style is very old school. Like, while I learned from a lot of new people, the evolution of what we see happening in our industry is really from what we took from back in the day. And I think that everything that we're seeing is going back. I mean, look at right now with COVID, right? COVID right now, everybody's afraid of manufacturers. You see that, you know, meat companies are shutting down because they're afraid of spreading and this and that. And all of a sudden, I think the great thing has come about is everybody's gone back to being artisans. People are at home baking again.
You
right?
cannot find yeast anywhere.
Well, you
gotta buy it in bulk now. You can't just buy your little packet.
You come to North American Pizza and Culinary Academy. We sell yeast, right? I'll even sell you my sourdough starter. So anyways, but that's a big thing.
The closest we'll ever come to having a son. Sancho.
My starter Sancho, right? But you know, those were some of like the big hurdles like over the years that I've had to overcome. And like, I never forget when I met, you know, Melisa. I had gotten divorced. I was divorced for a few years, and that was like one of the turning points in my life. It's like, you know what? I've hit ground zero. I'm living back home with my parents, which, you know, again, you know, to have an Italian mother that, you know, I'll never forget. I work all night on a Saturday night, and, you know, you get home, it's like 2:00 in the morning, you know, from working, not from partying, and you go to bed, and, you know, it's like never fails. Like on a Sunday morning, 7:30, there's like, you know, that plastic grocery store bag that's in your room, and it's like for 10 minutes. It's like, Jesus Christ, what the hell are you putting in this thing? Right? I was like, I was just getting some of your clothes. I was going to do your laundry. Like, my God, I got to get out. You know? But it was those kind of things. I think that was like my motivation. And even like when I met Melisa, that was some of the stuff too that, you know, I think that, you know, she had she was married previously as well, and she had her, you know, things that happened in her, you know, her past life. And I think that when we met, it was just so clean. You know, it was just, you had a bad experience, I had a bad experience. I got divorced, and the thing that fueled my fire is that I jumped on a plane and I went to Italy. And I was going to study, and that's what I did, was I buried myself in pizza. And all of a sudden, you know, here I am coming back to the States. And now I'm teaching guys that are like twice my age things that I've learned, and these guys are laughing at me like, that's never gonna work, no way. And now it's 15 years later to see the stuff and to have people call me out as like, you know, hey, you know, you understand it. You're like, you pioneered things. You kind of paved the road for a lot of these guys. And it's like, I still have so much to do. I still think I suck. You know, I still wake up every single morning and I'm looking through everything that I can get my hands on for new ideas and challenging myself. And even like with Melisa, I think that's another thing too, that, you know, she's constantly like, she's gotten into
I don't think I suck though.
You know, she doesn't suck. She's really good. But those are, like I said, those are like the things I think that sometimes when we look at each other, like you need somebody to kind of grab you and kind of shake you and say, what the hell are you talking about? You know, you're good at what you do. Figure out what you're trying to go to and just go to it, you know. Put the blinders on and just get that tunnel vision and just go. And again, I never had that before in my life, you know. Maybe it was, you know, an Italian upbringing that for us it was like, oh, no, we can't talk about that, or we never talk about this outside the house, you know. That whole mentality of how the, you know, those old school Italians were. Right. And then all of a sudden to see another side of the world, like everything opened up. Maybe it was just the freedom of, you know, me saying, all right, I'm on my own. If I screw this up, there's no safety net, right? And maybe it was just that. But again, you know, Melisa was a really big role then, probably even bigger now, that I can't see myself doing anything that I'm doing, because we still juggle a family. I say we, and I mean her, because, you know, you can't be on the road all the time, and you can't be in front of people and expect that you're going to have a family, and then you walk in the door And then all of a sudden, it's like, that Leave It to Beaver moment that, you got a wife in an apron that's waiting with a cigar and a cocktail. You walk in the door and all of a sudden...
arrange a cocktail, but...
Which we do. I think that's another...
I draw the line at apron.
But I think that's another cool thing that we do is that we figured out, how we need to decompress. And for us to sit down at the end of the night, there's nights when our kids, it could be a school week and our kids like 9:30, and it's like, listen, we're ready to go to bed. You guys want to go to bed? Fine, whatever. Sit on the couch. We're going to bed. But people sometimes hear that and say, well, how could you tell your kids? Like, how else are they going to learn? If they want to stay up all night, they're going to figure out the next morning. They still got to get up in the morning, right? So how did we learn our lessons? And sometimes it's not the best way. And
our kids don't stay up all night, but
they're not all night. But it's a good 10 or 10:30. That
our kids are. Imagine me meeting Leo. I was married to a restaurant owner previously who is in the pizza realm also, but not anywhere, not like Leo.
He's still from a historic family.
Exactly.
A historic Chicago pizza family.
Right. So
we say my wife was into pizza guys. That's at the end of the day.
So you have that, and I'm meeting him, and I'm telling my clients I have this boyfriend who's in the pizza world.
No, say it right. He's into flour, but like a florist.
Flour.
Not flour.
Flour sales.
Yeah.
He
sells flour, but like a florist, right?
I didn't want to say like a pizza guy because I was like, ooh.
A doughboy.
I already had a pizza guy, so now I have another pizza guy. But that transition was funny. But my point is that our kids, at least our middle daughter Isabella, she's used to the restaurant life. Jada's used to our life. Our kids aren't used to an everyday family that their parents work 9 to 5. They go to bed at a certain time. They eat dinner at a certain time. Right. It's just not how our life.
They never grew up that way, right? They know this is the only life they've known.
Our Angelina, our oldest, her situation's a little different. She hasn't experienced this as much, but definitely Isabella and Jada have lived this life of parents who are entrepreneurs. We work a lot. As much as we work, though, we have really good family time. It's just a little different than the average family. And
our family time, again, I think even what people will consider our family time, I think normal families would be like, wow, you guys are freaking nuts. Yeah. Because again, when because we don't have during the week as much time with each other, it's literally like we get up really early. Like for me, by 6:30, 7 o'clock, I'm already out the door. So I don't see them a lot in the morning. Melissa sees them in the morning, and then she's off to work. And then we're working those, the 12-hour days, whatever. So by the time we come home, again, it's literally like, all right, let's sit down, let's eat something, let's chill out a little bit, and then everybody's going to bed. But on the weekends or whenever we are together, that's when we really get into that mode that like, all right, what are we doing today, right? And it's usually that they don't want to go to, maybe they want to go to park or stuff like that. Right. But it's like, let's go out to dinner. Let's get dressed up and let's go here, And for us, again, it's like an event. And the kids
like something you can do
see
together.
that. Yeah, and it's almost like that. We have a lot of family parties. We always have our family over, and we're always doing stuff all together. And it reminds me a lot, like at least for me, of how we grew up when we were little kids. Like I remember Saturday night, Friday night. All of our family, we'd be all the cousins all together, and we'd be at my grandma's house or an aunt or uncle's house, and everybody would be all together. And again, maybe for our life, that was a lot of fun because we were all together. For our kids,
stories of the crazy stuff like you end up doing with your cousins as you're playing around together, and the games you invent and those kinds of things.
Sure.
Yeah.
And now it's like for them, it's like, oh well. We went out to RPM on Saturday night, I'm introducing them to the chef, they don't. For them, it's just part of the world.
And our middle daughter is, her dad also. They're going out to dinner. He lives a similar schedule as us, I'll say. So they're doing things like that also. So we go somewhere, and she's like, well, what are we gonna? Where are we going to eat? Because it's important to her to know that what we do is quality,
Yeah, and they're not our kids again. I mean, talk about like creating a palette. You know, like Isabella, you take her to a restaurant and she's looking at the menu like, I think I'm going to have the lobster tail. You know, like I think I'm going to have a fillet for dinner. Like she's not looking at the kids' menu. I don't think I've ever remembered Isabella eating off the kids' menu. It's always like a grown up. You know,
we were in the middle of Lake Geneva at like a place that was like a casual like bar and grill, and she's like telling Leo, like, what do you think if I get the filet here? He's like, this is a burger place. You should get a burger here.
But again, I think that is one of the cool things about, you know, at some point, like when we're old, you know, I'm 90 years old if I ever make it there. And, you know, to hear my kids talking about those experiences, I think that's part of, you know, what I'm looking forward to seeing is, you know, the stories that they end up recollecting, what they've actually absorbed out of all the things that we're doing. And, you know, again, are we going to hear stories about, oh, I never forget, we were pissing them off I wanted to order lobster, and I'm waiting for that kind of stuff, because at least it'll be like, oh, I knew it, you know. Like,
we think about that too, and just between our kids, like, are, you know, certain things that happen, like, are they going to look back at this and be like, oh, remember that time that, you know, Dad lost his cool and he yelled at us, and we were, you know, or we had this situation as a family, and what are those stories they're going to tell each other?
Like, are we going to put them in therapy?
No. Right. Remember that time Mom and Dad flipped a house? Remember that time they started a podcast? Like, are they weird or what? Like, my friends' parents aren't doing this, but it's like that.
Right.
We're giving them something else, a different experience, a different way to like perceive the world, a different lens to look through that's maybe not like everybody else, but that's okay. Like, it's okay to be a little different.
I think it'd be a good just analogy going off of what you were saying too. Like you're creating a palette for your children through your experiences and the things that you guys are passionate about and the way you facilitate family. And I think that's true for any family. Whatever their experiences are, or the way that they are facilitating that time, that's creating that palette of normalcy and range for kids that they'll grow up in and appreciate.
Or even just showing them, look, you know what? This is what else is outside the world. And maybe everybody else isn't doing this. These are the experiences, though, for us that we're eagerly seeking, and we want to include you in them, you know. So I think, again, that it goes back to, for me at least, the things that as a kid, you know, like, you know, who doesn't like their mom or their mom's or grandma's meatballs or whatever it might be. We always talk about, oh, my mom's cooking, my grandma's cooking. Believe me, I got plenty of friends that say, oh my gosh, my mom was terrible cook, you know. Like, really? What's that like? No wonder you're so skinny.
That's how my kids know. I'm like, you don't know how good you've got.
Right. But I don't think I've ever said that to my kids. But I think that when they do stuff, right, there's got to be a point when they go to school to say, yeah, we realize that this isn't like everybody else, you know? So I'm not saying that we're better than anybody by any means. I'm just saying that we've kind of steered the ship a little bit differently, and that we're deciding to go down a different road. And, you know, our kids are going to be here till at least they're 18, right? If they decide to...
If they're Italian, maybe a little longer.
Get off the boat. Well, they're girls, so hopefully that's a little different, right?
I don't know.
My brother's over 40 and still at my mom's house, you know?
I don't know about you, but me more than Leo, I feel a lot of guilt with kids. Like, you know, we work very hard. We're always being pulled in 100 directions, and we're being pulled by different people all the time. And then you have your kids, and you feel a little guilty about leaving and working and how much time you spend at work. But our kids have grown accustomed to, in this time, they're like, do you have to work today? Because, like, don't you got to go to work? You know?
You're cramping my vibe, Mom.
So, exactly. I think they just get accustomed to the way we are. And then when it's not like that, they're like, wait, what? You know, a little worried, or like, this is normally what you do. How come you're not doing it? And they're okay with it. You know, they're not, their life is still good, even though we've both pursued large careers.
Yeah.
I remember when I first, like, quit my day job, you know, and I was home, like, the first Saturday. Like, normally I would work all the time, you know, and on a Saturday I was home. I never forget it. Like, we woke up, we had breakfast, we went to Costco. I still never forget it. and like, I never forget the kids looking at me like, what are you doing here? Yeah, what's going on? How much longer are you going to be here? And it's like, no, I'm going to be here for the whole weekend. You know, like, I'm off this weekend. And that was a big shock, because again, it was something so different than they were used to seeing, where I would work until, midnight or whatever it might be. And the first time when I was home for the weekend, to me, that was at least one of the things that I'll remember as far as my career goes was that first time being home on a Saturday and the guilt, like in the restaurant world, like chefs have that thing where it's like that brotherhood and we're all these, tough guys and, all that stuff. And, you do have a lot of pissing matches in the kitchen and, people don't know about the underbelly most of the time. But, I never forget that, like sitting at home on a Saturday night thinking like, man, I'm sitting on the couch watching TV. Like I'm supposed to be doing something. And there's that other side of it too. So that was always another thing too. That I think that, even when I got to that point, all of a sudden, we built the 2-car garage in our backyard. And I built a little pizzeria in my backyard.
I told them how that happened, that I knew about the pizza oven before I knew about its surroundings.
The building that had to take form over it.
Yeah, it's okay. I forgive you for that.
But it was, but it was again, it was really just to build a workshop. Some guys have a workshop and they build, things out of wood, or they tinker, or, my dad's got a shed with, 20 lawnmowers in it and all that other stuff. But I built something that I could make pizzas in. And we had people, before we opened the school, I had people traveling to Chicago to come and sit with me for, Friday. They'd arrive on Friday night and they'd leave on Sunday night and go back to wherever they came from. And I was consulting restaurants in the backyard where we developed menus and we were training and doing all that stuff. And that was really the proving ground for the school. And it was well, obviously there's people showing up here. Can you imagine if all the ideas are in my head that I'm thinking about? Can you imagine what we would do then? And, that was kind of, again, I couldn't have done that even even close to doing that if I didn't have that support system at home where it was always just just go do you. I've been Leo Pizza since I was a kid, and, just go be Leo Pizza. And there's days when I wake up in the morning and I look at her or I'm looking at, one of the kids, I'm like, man, I don't want to be fucking Leo Pizza today. And I just want to stay home. I just want to chill out with you guys or whatever. And it's the reality of now it's gotten to the point where it's no, now it's, you're surrounded by the public and the public is constantly pulling you. And it's well, now I'm there for them, and it's I've got this other family. And that's kind of what we do every single day, at least in my world. I don't know about you. You've got that family too that's been with you for 20 years and they come see you every day. You don't take days off. You don't call in sick. No. So I think that's another piece of it. We're kind of married to that as well.
How do you balance that? Because even when you introduced yourself, you said I'm a hairdresser, but I have all of these other roles. Obviously, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're a hairdresser. It sounds like you're a lot of things to a lot of different people. So how do you? That's one thing that I've struggled with. There are some dreams and aspirations I have. How do I continue to move forward in that, but know that my kids are loved and they're taken care of, and so are some of these other things. How do you continue to push yourself to be more in that realm?
Well, I started with because I've been doing this for so long in a certain way. I've never taken a break. This pandemic is the longest I've ever been off work in 25 years. This is longer than my maternity leaves. So I think that becomes just a habit of working. It's just how I've worked. And then once I had Isabella, who's now 12, I worked in a way that I could do everything. And it sounds I think when you want something bad enough and you want to, you're invested in this and that's what you're going to do, you make you do things to get around it. And being with Leo, when you're married to somebody that doesn't support that, I know there's a lot of guys. I work every Sunday. I've worked every Sunday until this pandemic. I've had a couple off here and there, but Leo said not that long ago, I haven't ever known you not working a Sunday doing hair. And many people in my industry are you work Sunday. Well, I do more clients on a Sunday than most people do all week. So that kind of being flexible with my schedule, working around different things, doing things that maybe people wouldn't do. Sometimes I start at 7 a.m. so I could be at someone's dance recital or a softball game or whatever it is. That's kind of the flexibility with doing hair. but it is like kind of doing a dance all the time to try to be everywhere at, and still maintain a very strong career. It's not an easy thing, but it's something that I've been committed to. And so if you have that desire, like, you work it out. And like I said, if Leo is very understanding, we're able to kind of counteract our schedules. There are a lot of men that are like, you're not going to be home now? Why? That's not acceptable. And it just has been between us,
But it's like always been like an underlying rule. It's like Melissa says she's going to be at home at 5:30. It's going to be 6:45 before she gets home.
But you know that.
Yeah, and even like her, like, I never forget, like when we first started dating, like her mother was even like, oh, you come over for dinner on a Sunday, and she'd be working on a Sunday. And it'd be like, yeah, come over, we'll be here about 6, and get there, and she's at home. And her mom like, oh, you really didn't think she'd be home now, sit down and have a beer. And I'd sit there with her mom and dad, her dad had a beer, yeah, she'll be here home, but don't worry about it. But it's all I've ever known. But she's like, literally got people at, 7 a.m. is not a joke. 7 a.m. She's got people waiting. Mm-hmm. And, before the pandemic, it was like, all right, here's 4 people. You got 2 assistants. One's getting their hair washed. One's sitting in a chair here doing something. Another one's there. And just bouncing back and forth all day long. Mm-hmm. Like, we talk about the chaos of the kitchen, but I think that's got to be the chaos of of her business as well. And how do you manage that? And for me, it's always been that you kind of, I feel like I'm in that Zen moment, like the Matrix, right? The more chaos that gets thrown at me, people can't handle that kind of pressure when it's going, 100 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. It takes a special type of person. And again, people in the restaurant business deal with that every single day. Mm-hmm. But there's other people that come into our world that'll step behind a line, mm-hmm. and all of a sudden look at this, and you could see that they start tensing up, or they're starting to back into a corner. Like, you see them backing away, mm-hmm. because it's very intimidating. Mm-hmm. But then the other side of it, like, that's all I know is how to go fast. But then the other side is when you get home, and then things get
slow, right?
You don't know how to shut it off, right? And I think that's another thing over all the years that I've had to really, really struggle and fight for, like, to figure that out. I don't sleep. And it's partly because of that. Yeah, I sleep, but again, it's one of those that, when it is, I'm up, I'll go to sleep for a few hours, I'll wake back up, I'm on the computer, I'll go lay on the couch, and then there's always something going on. But it's not like you slept for 8 hours.
It's always probably our biggest challenge is we could chill out together, go have dinner, glass of wine, whatever, but like chilling out in general is not in our nature. So again, the pandemic has been very trying for
a lot of people,
me to, and a lot of people, just to kind of absorb the moment and, be cool with what's happening, because we're so high energy, so fast paced, always working. And it's an effort to come home and not treat everybody around you like they work for you, because that's what you do all day. You have people helping you all day. You have people doing things for you all day. You're busy. And, then you come home and you have these people that need you that are like, can you do this? And you're like, what? Wait, what?
Can you get the milk out of the refrigerator?
Yeah.
What the hell? Get up and go get your soda. What do you need?
You need an assistant? Yeah. Mine's at the shop.
Yeah. I said I feel like I've been bossed around for like 10 weeks. Like, Mom, could you do this? Could you do that?
So take me to, so you say like you both have pretty like busy schedules on a weekly basis. How do you arrange that with one another? Like, how does that look? Is it kind of a fixed routine where you already know, or do you sit down and do a side by side calendar?
Because that's what we do. We like sit down on like Mondays and we're like, okay, the week. Where you need to be? Where do I need to be? Like, how do we? When are we trading off? Like, how do we need to?
Sometimes we find it hard to sit down and do that schedule, mm-hmm. but when we don't, the shit hits.
Then you
the
pay
fan.
for it later on. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
And, exactly. I think I do. I have, Melissa might not agree with this, but I have a lot of guilt a lot of times when like she's looking at the school calendar online, mm-hmm. to see what my schedule is going to be like, so she can start saying, well, he's got a class on this night, so I'm not going to, I know I can't count on him that night. Mm-hmm. But then there's the other side of it too, that I know that it does bring a lot of stress into our relationship, that sometimes my schedule isn't printed out a week in advance or a month in advance. Sometimes I'll get a call from a client and it's like, all right, 2 days from now I got to be in Texas, you know, and it's like this just popped up. And that's one of the really hard parts for us because she's got, you know, a lot going on, and then she's trying to coordinate at home. And then if we're not home, then it's like, all right, what do you have to do? Well, either we're going to pass the kids on to, you know, their grandparents, you know, which is usually ends up being like, you know, Melissa's mom, because her schedule is a little bit different than my parents. Or, you know, there's babysitters and all that other thing. So that's a really hard trade-off. And I think that a lot of the friction that comes in our marriage, not that there's a lot of friction, but I think that the conflicts that we see, a lot of it has to do with exactly that, because we're both getting pulled from so many directions, and then getting it back to center is so difficult. Maybe Melissa be like, well, I get it back to center all the time. How come you can't get it back to center? And you try to tell, like, you know, I at least try to make the you know, call it out that, look, me getting back to center, I've got like all these other things that I'm trying to do. And she said, well, you're not busier than me. And we start getting into that sometimes. But again, it is one thing that I don't think that if we respected what each other did, I think that this would have been done a long time ago. And that's what I think we see, that, you know, a lot of couples out there, like, we like each other. Can you imagine being quarantined for 3 months? Like, quarantined in a house together and you don't like each other? You know, people talk about, like, oh, there's going to be another baby boom in 9 months. You know? But then it's like, is there? Like, I personally got a handful of people that I know that are like, you know, they can't wait to get away from each other. Like, I'll take the risk of going to the grocery store. I don't care. I got to get out. But again, that's not us. But I think that that's always been something that for us has really resonated. I think that Melissa, being that, you know, good-natured person, having the patience that she does, I think that she does cut me a lot of slack. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things. Any advice that I would give is like, you know, don't look at everything I'm doing in this success, because there's whole other box of stuff, right, that goes along with it, and you got to deal with it. You can't just say you're going to push it underneath the, you know, the rug and it's going to go away, which sometimes, you know, I have no choice. A lot of times I have to do that. I hate to do it, and it happens. Right? And sometimes, you know, Melissa's, you know, telling me, oh, well, you know, you just like to turn on an aura and think it's going to go away, but it didn't go away. I just handled it, you know? But it's not a good thing. But again, it's the reality of things. And, you know, I think that's, again, why I think our relationship has been so special through the years.
Yeah, and I think I've seen that with ourselves and with other couples too, where it could easily go one way or another. Like, it could easily go to one way where, like, oh, you think you got it bad, like, I'm the one who's doing this and this and this, and then the other person can fire back, well, you know, you're doing that, but I'm doing this and this and this. And we've had those conversations too.
Right.
But I think it reverses, where it's like, I know you're busy and I know I'm busy, but I want to support you and I want to encourage you. Like, you keep going and I'll pick up what I can, and then we'll switch. And then when it's my turn, like, I'll pick up what I can, and you know, you got to do what you got to do.
But I think we've also acknowledged when you're successful, it's because I'm in the background kind of holding it together so that you can be in the forefront kind of pushing where you want to be. And the same thing, when I'm busy and I'm working, like, you swoop in and you're dad and you kind of take the reins, and then I can be successful, and it doesn't happen without the other person.
Yeah, 100%. It's got to happen both ways. And I think that, you know, with us at least, you know, we were both married before, and, you know, we had that, I hate to say it, like that dream Italian wedding, you know, where you've got hundreds of people there, and, you know, the ice sculptures and all the nonsense bullshit that goes along. And, you know, looking back, it's like, oh my God, I wish I had like 3/4 of that money back, you know, and, you know, all the money that we wasted on stuff like that. And looking back, it's like, all right, we did all that, and it still didn't work, you know. So what was the piece that was missing? And it was really the core. So you can have all the beautiful stuff on the outside, but unless you got the, you know, the nuts and bolts of it holding together, it's just that. And I think that's, again, you know, going back to the pandemic, I think that this is the first time couples especially have been spending so much time together. And it's like, this is probably maybe more time than they've ever spent together, right? People getting forced to work from home, you know, and things that,
we said we want more family time.
Yeah, and like, be careful what you wish for, right?
Right. Now you got it.
Now you got
Even
it.
the kids are like, when are you going to go back to work?
Yeah. And then the whole e-learning thing, like I think we scarred our kids for life. Like there's no reason why I should be teaching my kid anything that has to do with the educational from school. Like it doesn't work. Or I'm trying to teach regular, like, hey, this is how you add and subtract. This is regular math.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, that's not how you do it. Like, really? I don't know.
I still got the answer, didn't I?
Yeah, that's right. It took you 2 hours, but you got there. Good,
What's one thing that you admire about Melisa that you think that, like, had you never met her, that you'd be, like, missing? Like, the one thing that you think that you've, like, taken from her?
No, it's actually really simple. I think it's her ability to be around people, and no matter where she's at or what the situation is at, I think people are, not that they're drawn to her, but I think she's drawn to people. And she could just walk into a situation and just read a room, and then all of a sudden just talking and having fun and doing her thing. And I think that's a big thing, because to see the flip side of it, and to be in, over the years, relationships and all that stuff, I think to me that was always one of those things that, man, you could have this, this miserable person that you're literally just dragging along with you, and that's no good, right? But I think that's probably the one trait or characteristic that no matter what situation that I put her into, she knocks it out of the park like a champ. It doesn't matter if it's, celebrity type people or huge industry people, CEO, presidents of companies, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. She'll introduce herself. She's charming. They like to hang out. She makes herself part of the group. And again, it's just really natural. And I think that to me was always that number one thing that really resonated. Out of all the other stuff, that's probably the number one.
And what about Leo for you? What's, like, one thing about him that just, like, I don't know, seals the deal, where you're like, I love him because, or like, he's taught me this?
So all the things, because there's a lot of things, but the best thing about Leo for me is that he's predictable in any circumstance. So if he says he's going to be home at a certain time, he's home at a certain time. If he says he's going to do something, he does it. It's not, and I'm not talking about, like, being handy around the house like that.
All I know is how to make pizza.
That's never been important to me. I'm just saying that for me, Leo is understanding and predictable. It's no matter what we have going on, where he is, if he's in town, out of town, or working, not working, I could depend on him for anything.
There's not these games like what he says is what
it's
it
never,
is.
There's always a clear picture of what's going to happen, in everything, really. And I think that's like the most important thing for me. It's never like, he doesn't disappoint me very often. And that's a big deal,
I think so, because I think when you're striving for a stable and fulfilling relationship, that goes a long way, because you don't want to be on the phone with somebody or talk to someone and just be throwing these curveballs all the time. Like,
right.
It's not a great way to conduct a
the
relationship.
roller coaster situation has never been good for me. I'm not a game player. We're both pretty black and white, although I feel like we have a very good bullshit game between the two of us. We can probably get ourselves in and out of any situation. But when it comes to
handy.
Our relationship, it's pretty like black and white, and accountability and dependability is really good.
But it's like, also like, when was it Sex in the City, where like we like to color with all the colors in the box, right? We use them all. Right, I think that's,
sure.
But that's again, you push it to the limit as much as you can, and I think that again that's what makes things interesting. That's where the spark still is. We've been together 7 years married, but it's like 10 years altogether, and I told her I was going to marry her on our first date, and it scared the shit out of her, and she went running, and everyone's like, well, give it a shot, because maybe this guy's really for real, and it was one of those, she left for a little bit, but then she was back.
I think I told Rosanna I love you maybe the second day that we were even dating.
Yes, and we were also 15.
We were also 15, so we knew all about love at that point. Yeah.
That's right. It happens. That's right.
Yeah, but
When
it came true. Yeah, right, even when you're young. So I'm curious about the Pizza Academy, because that wasn't always a thing, but it is now. So like how long was that a dream or kind of a vision that you had before it became what it is, and what needed to fall into place for it to get to that point?
So prior to 2018, when we opened the school, that it's like really important to understand that there was this like giant body of work that had to get accomplished. And it started out with saying, all right, I was going to go to pizza school for the first time, which was in California. And it turned out that the guy I went to his first class turns out to be like one of the biggest pizza guys in the world. And who wasn't at that time. It was kind of just like we were doing something all together. And I was a Chicago guy and he was a California guy. And he had a couple more experiences than me. He was a little bit farther ahead than me. And, he saw something and it was like, hey, you're this little guy from Chicago, but you got to come and see it. Have you ever made a New York pizza before? You ever seen what we're doing here? Like, I had never remember being out of I remember that was the first time I was ever in California. Mm-hmm. And he's like, come spend a couple of days with me out here. And I was out there for about a week. And I was in this pizza class, and all of a sudden it was like, man, there's so much more. I thought I was the shit. I knew everything, but all I knew about was in Chicago. And that was really the first time it's like, man, I'm on a stage now all of a sudden where I thought I was, at the highest I could be. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I'm like on the lowest that I can be. And I can't even stretch a dough ball by hand, and think about that. I mean, this is something, a life skill. And I'd been making pizzas all my life. And I couldn't even, like I said, do it from scratch. And that was a big thing. And, that was really my inspiration at that time to say, I'm into this, and I really want to learn more about pizza. Pizza, for me at that point, was about toppings, right? Mm-hmm. And I really want to learn about the dough, and I want to learn about what makes the dough great. And I'm going to start focusing on being a baker, again, a life skill. And at that time, there was in that first class, it was actually his first class, where he had come out of the same school that I ended up going to. Mm-hmm. And the headmaster of the school from Italy was in California, and he was helping him out with his first class, a guy named Graziano. And I met Graziano for the first time, and I flew in Italian, and I'm speaking to him. And at that time, it was more Italian dialect, Calabrese dialect, Southern Italian dialect, where these guys are all from the north. They're from Venice, so they're proper. Talk about the people from the north are more white collar, and the people down from the south are more blue collar, or like that farmer type, worker. And that was the first thing. I think he thought it was cute, and like, no, I'm legit, because when I was out there, when I was in California and I'd spent 5 days with this guy, at the end, he looks at me, and there was the owner of a flour mill was also here as well from Italy. And he says, we're not done seeing each other. And if you can find a way to get to Italy, I want to train you. Just like that. And at the end of the week, when he gives me my certificate, which my certificate's somewhere around here, but he gives me my certificate and he looks at me and he says, I'm going to make you a promise. I used to get choked. I still get choked up sometimes. He says to me, just like this. He gives me my certificate and he says, if you ever achieve the master instructor role, just like the guy I was in the class with, right? I promise you that I'm going to come here to the United States and I'm going to do your first class just like I'm here in California doing his first class. And we never talked about it again. Next thing I know, the guy from the flour mill is like, hey, you're great. Obviously you speak Italian. Yeah, you don't speak Italian like us, but you can understand what we're saying. You're a good guy. We could see you're a good guy. You have no agenda. Mm-hmm. And if you want, we'll bring you out to Italy.
By agenda, what most people don't know is that there are like pizza politics. There's a pizza world. It's
crazy. There's a lot of politics.
It's very odd. You don't know it till you're in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy.
I found that to be true of like all different domains where like it's like this whole little world.
Yeah.
And it's like, within it, it's like, unless you're in it, you don't understand, like, how things move and whatever. But when you're in it, it's like, whoa.
I don't like to say a cult, but...
Yeah, I like that.
It's definitely a strong group.
It's definitely like you're signing up for a family that you're outside family. And a lot of those people in that family don't like each other. and they are on different sides, different teams, and things that divide the team are not how you make a pizza. It's by the kind of tomatoes that you use, or the kind of flour that you use, or what mill you support, and that sort of thing. Well, I didn't know I was getting into that, and the guy from the flour mill that owns a mill is like, hey, I'm going to bring you to Italy, and while you're here, you're going to sleep in the dorm at my mill, which now turned out to be like their R&D center, and I'm going to bring you here, and in that same time, you're going to be able to go to school and learn from Graziano. And sure enough, like within months, I was on a plane again. The guy that was in California sponsored me to go to the school. The school accepted me, and I went to pizza school for the first time. And this was the first time talking about realizing the kind of like the whole taboo of being an American in the pizza world, and now being on their home turf and being called an American like it's derogatory, right? That was something that still, it took a long time, maybe not as much anymore, but it took a long time to get rid of that. And I've had to eat a lot of shit over the years and listen to that until I could finally prove that I'm no different than you and I'm probably better than you, right? And I just happen to live in the United States, which you guys wish you could be, So that was but that was the reality of it. Yeah. And I remember being in school and really, getting that beat down. And I think that was one of the things also that when I got that, I think you need that piece of it, because
that's what I was going to ask. Do you think that made you stronger?
Yeah, because all of a sudden that whole cocky Chicago guy, right, was knocked down and beat down so much that it forced me to say, this is the way it's supposed to be done. This is where it all started. And if you understand the way pizza is in Italy, you totally understand the immigration to the United States, and when it hit New York and then spread west. And all the styles that we see here in the States, we can physically line up to one of the styles in Italy. And to me, that was one of the things that blew my mind. And when I came back to the States, at a time when people were like, what do you mean you're doing this? Or nobody's doing that. Like, what are you wasting your time for? You're going to tell me you're going to teach me how to make pizza? This is where the guy's name's Tony out in California. This is one of those lessons that Tony taught me firsthand, and was really adamant about, like, this is what you're getting involved in, and this is what you're going to hear. And when you come back, you got to remember that at some point, those guys are going to want to hear what you have to say. It took a long time to get there. And through the years, he was another mentor to me, and really was one of those guys that there wasn't many people you can call back and say, hey, you know what, I was just here, and these guys are telling me about mozzarella, or these guys are telling me about tomatoes. And there's a difference between a tomato from southern Italy, a tomato from Parma, and a tomato from California. Just learning and understanding ingredients. Where are you going to go and get that kind of information 12 years ago, 15 years ago, where we were just getting the internet, And that was like one of those big times that at my point then, going back to Italy after all these years and saying, I got a master certification in one style, right? And then to go back and say, I've got a master certification in all 5 styles, that's when the world gets really small. And that was the first time then I got, called to do to become a master instructor. And that's really where the point of this whole thing is going, is that you get the call and say, look, we're inviting you, but once you become an instructor, you have an obligation to open a school. So now you're on the pedestal, and it's basically like, we want you as an ambassador for what we're doing. And we want you to teach and improve the world of pizza throughout the world. And then, let alone everything else, then you go back to Naples, right, where we talk about the mothership. Right? Which Neapolitans don't even call themselves Italian. They're Neapolitans, right? And to go through, it was a pretty special thing the last time we were there, because I went there with Melissa, and we were on our own. And to be able to go through Naples like a tourist, right? And actually see, fascism, and see that there's swastikas still on municipal buildings, in central historic buildings in Naples, and to see that the bullet holes and the shrapnel are still there, and not that they couldn't afford to build them, or they couldn't repair them. They left them there in memory of, this is how bad things were here, and we want that as a reminder. To go into the subterranean, they call it, which is where during World War II, all the Neapolitans went underground.
I could not go in that area.
She got claustrophobic. We went down the first flight of stairs down, and she's like, "We got to go upstairs." And I get it.
I didn't tell him to come with me. I said, "You could go."
But
I'm not.
Literally, they dug and dug and dug underground because there was so much bombardment above that that was the only place they go.
They had like a city, a world downstairs in this. I can't even call it downstairs, like down below.
Down below, there's so water and there's lakes and there's, because again, the natural water, and they've built caves and that sort of thing. But, you talk about we're talking about now stories that go back hundreds of years. And to see that there's tunnels that actually were dug and excavated all the way from Rome, so that if Caesar got in trouble, they would bring him all the way down through Naples, because that was a port community where people can get on a boat and Caesar would be safe and he would go, right? So to be able to see that where you're in the story, right? I think that was one of the things that, you start connecting all these pieces, and you say...
Or pizzas.
But pizzas is way bigger than me, right? And to me, it became more of a responsibility to saying, this is something, I love pizza, right? We love to eat pizza, but the what happens then when I'm gone, and who's going to take the torch, right? And who's going to continue after me? So these are the kinds of things like Graziano saw in me, Graziano saw in Tony. And when I got the call, the first thing I did was call Tony. And Tony's like, I heard about it already. They called me also. It's kind of you getting made, like you see the model.
Yeah.
And that's really how it was. And, Tony's like, look, I'm going to tell you, it's not easy. He had gone and he said, I brought a translator out because it's so technical. Like you walk in the morning and they're telling you, this is what we're doing today. And at the end of the day, there's a test. And if you don't pass the test today, they basically say, all right, enjoy the rest of your trip to Italy, you're out. But by the end of the week, when they have the final master exam, I'll never forget it. I was done with my exam. I'm texting back to the U.S. Her and my partner Anthony are waiting for my message. And they're like, what the hell's going on? And like 3 hours later, they're literally grading the exam one by one in front of you. And they say, all right, go back into the other room. And then when they're done, that was the presentation of certificates. Out of 10, we were 8 that finished. So the whole thing about opening a school was kind of just like an idea, like, well, let's even see if I pass first. But then when I passed, there was like the whole emotional part. I'll never forget, like I was sitting in my rental car. I had a Fiat Panda. I'll never forget, the smallest car you've ever seen. And I'm sitting in the dark because like by this time now it's like 8 o'clock at night, whatever. And I'm in the middle of Venice, not on the beautiful canal part. I'm like mainland. And I'm calling back to the U.S. and I'm like all emotional, like choked up on the phone. And I'm like, I can't believe I did it. It's done. And then coming back to the U.S. and it's like, all right, let's open a school. And who's going to show up? We don't even know if people are going to show up, right? Because there's never been a pizza school in Chicago. And then to have that on your back, like now that whole responsibility. And it was really like, from that point on, it became, Leo as a pizza guy to all of a sudden Leo as a master, and that's even still to this day. It's one of those titles. I really dislike that title because I feel like that we still have so much to learn, and people, the more people that I teach, the more challenges. And that's the thing, that's the greatest thing. Like you see like one of your kids succeed, and when you teach like one of these guys or girls, there's probably just as many women, or we're seeing just as many women getting into our industry, and then to see them go out and be successful and opening their restaurants and they're making money and they're happy and they're doing all this other thing, that's where like again for us that's the pride. And it's like, I didn't give away my secrets. I was able to do it in a way that I motivated somebody enough to let them excel. And then they opened this great restaurant, and at the end of the day, it's kind of like the bragging rights. It's one of my guys, and that's kind of the camaraderie of it, And there's a lot of jealousy, guys. Pizza guys, right? Pizza guys are horrible, man. We talk about like the women sitting in these little groups, and talking shit about other women. Right? Pizza guys are even worse than that, And it's like you're never happy. And I think that's one
hairdressers compared to hairdressers. They're way worse. They're way worse.
Oh man!
But there is a while back. I have a friend that I worked with who actually passed away, who was a really like rock star hairdresser, and he made the point of how did chefs get TV shows and like they're rock stars and like hairdressers were supposed to be that rock star. But the chef they're just like a little more something that
people
they
just
want.
like to do it. It resonates to people, you know.
And
it's
everybody could do it. You know, like you cannot promote cutting hair from home.
How many times have I said, like, no joke, I've looked at Melissa so many times and said, you know what? I'm going to go find me a pair of scissors and get me a comb, and I'm going to start doing hair cuts at the house. I'm going to start cutting. Like, I've got plenty of friends. Like, yeah, I'll come and cut my hair. Yeah, whatever. Come on down.
I've cut all 3 of our boys' hair twice now.
I know. It's bad. It's bad.
But I understand now,
now.
having done it, I now understand why it is a craft and why it is something that not everybody can do. And it is like, okay, yeah, I cleaned it up and it looked, but I'm like, we need to tip more, is what I told him. We like that is a craft, and that is a skill, and that is he's not either. That's why I
She
chose him.
tips ungodly amounts of money.
Well, I was in a restaurant.
This person sucked. I'm pissed at you for even offering this much money. All right, give me that book. I'm taking $20, whatever the fuck it is.
No. I'm a very generous tipper.
Very generous, for sure.
But I've had the luxury of having people be very generous to me, so I could never be not a good tipper.
Well, like listening to both of you, like one of the things that seems evident is that like you could say like, okay, they're like we work with hair or we work with pizza, and at a base level, I think like your average consumer understands it like you would expect your consumer to. Like we've got our pizza place around the corner. When we want pizza, we go pick it up. It tastes okay, no complaints. Everybody likes pizza, but I think what you're telling us is that there's a whole history and a whole story and a style and an art to it, and there's a reason why, even like why we eat the pizza that we do, or it is the way that it is at the place around the corner where we live in this Chicago suburb, and there's a whole world of experience beyond our little share of that we can, I think, get more out of, and that's certainly what you guys have found and what you're now giving to others through your
Leo
your
will be the
experience.
first person to go to any pizza place. I would say the only pizza place we haven't gone together is like Domino's or Little Caesars.
No change. Yeah.
Although he has an appreciation for the R&D that has gone behind Domino's or Little Caesars.
They're clients of mine.
Exactly.
Yeah, like we've worked with them, and to see like again, it's a whole nother piece of the business that there's a lot of science behind that, and the geeky dough guy in me that resonates to. But again, is it a pizza that I'm going out to? But what makes me the guy to say going out and eating a $5 pizza is a bad thing? Because I also think that it brings necessity. Not everybody's got enough money to say they're going to go spend $20 on a pizza, right? Especially when it's 12 inches and comes out of a wood-fired oven. I don't care what kind of tomatoes and cheese they use. There's other people saying, look, I can only afford to put this on the table. My kids want a pizza, and I'm going to get them a pizza. And maybe we don't eat pizza every night, but this is the pizza that we're going to eat. So I understand there's the necessity of it, right? Because where we grew up, right, we do with a pound of pasta, some tomatoes, you can eat for a long time. You get a 10-pound bag of potatoes, and you could eat for a long time, right? Figure out how to stretch things. So to some people, that $5 pizza, who am I to say that, yeah, that's a crappy pizza. Don't feed your kids that. It's poison. Maybe it is. But again, at the end of the day, when you don't have a lot of other stuff to give them, to say that, yeah, on a Friday night, whatever, this is something fun, and we're all going to get together around the table. Well, you know what? That $5 pizza is what brought everybody together. So I understand that side of it too. And again, maybe it took me to this point to get there, because it's something I definitely would never said 10 years ago. And, again, the whole evolution of what we're doing, and, to see that, the restaurateur still wants to open a restaurant, but people now are getting away from the skill side of it. Like, will there ever be robotic hairdressers? Probably not. But there's robotic pizza makers right now, and you can go to a vending machine and get a pizza. And that's kind of this thing that, to us, that it's like, well, maybe we need to push harder, because I do kids classes all the time. I'm like, I go into like high schools and do home ec classes, and to me it's always been like, well, I'm all tattooed up, I talk funny, and if maybe that's what a kid needs to get that little spark and say, hey, you know what, this resonates. Like, I was a misfit in school. I was horrible in school. I didn't want to be there. But this was always something that, again, at home, my mom was cooking, my grandma was cooking. And for me, it was always something that, hey, this was easy to do. And I can't believe people are going to pay me to do it, right? And maybe you don't have to think as hard like back then, as I do now, but maybe it's really easy for me to do. So again, those are some of the biggest things for me that I see. And my wife is another one. And when she came to me and said, "Look, I got asked to be part of an education program, so I'm gonna start mentoring." And once a week or once every other week, we're meeting at this salon, and I'm gonna be showing a cut, or I'm gonna show a color, or I'm gonna do whatever. I get that too, because she's really in the same spot. Maybe there's not vending machines that you can go and get your hair color out of. Or maybe a robot's not sitting there actually cutting your hair. But again, at some point, it's still a trade, and we still need to work with our hands.
Yeah.
I love how much you guys are into educating yourselves on being the best, or even partnering with other people to get to that next level. Where some people are oh, I want to be the best, so that means I'm gonna keep my secrets and I'm gonna keep to myself. But you guys find that you get better and more experience and a broader understanding and a broader context when you are connecting with other people, when you're partnering with them, even when you're cut down by other people to show you that maybe you're not what you thought you were, and then that continues to teach you. Sometimes, you think you have to do it yourself, but even with each other, you find together that you're better because you guys can offer each other something, and I think that's great.
You're in the wedding business, right? So you're coordinating weddings. Growing up, all right, we were all pizza makers. I can give you the name of probably 20 pizza guys, local guys in Chicago, that I was a hoodlum with on the street, but we all worked in different pizza joints, right? We did all this other stuff, and then after we were done with work, we all kind of went to the same places and did our thing. But for you, I remember, even for myself, make extra side money. We were all DJing, so we were in that wedding business, and that's a whole nother world. So for you to say I'm gonna do a wedding, right? And somebody's come to me, a bride or a bridezilla has come, and she's destroying me, right? And then what's the first thing you do? You could either say, well, screw this broad, she's a bridezilla, I'm not gonna deal with it, whatever. She's a terrible client. Or you're gonna say, I'm gonna work that much harder. I'm gonna make sure that every single thing on this wish list is done. It's done to the best that it can be done. And then in that quick few hours that wedding goes on, and at the end of the night, it's all done. And that whole year, 2 years of planning is gone. And you sit there at the end of the night, and that bride comes up to you. Maybe they don't come up to you. But at the end of the night, they come up to you, you get that look, right? Or you see the pictures or the video when it's done. And it's holy shit, look what I did, right? So you have a decision. There's two roads. You can either choose in your life to be miserable, and everything that you do is negative, which there's plenty of those people in the world. Or you can say, well, suck it up, buttercup, right? And just figure it out and go balls out and do it the best that you can do it. And if you can't do it to that extent, learn what went wrong and then go ahead and do it the next time, right? So it's no different for you or anybody. And this is one of the things that we try to tell people when, I've been consulting for many, many years. And when people open a restaurant, you got people that sit in front of you that are in other industries, doctors, lawyers, people making tons of money. And all of a sudden, Anthony Bourdain said it best, in one of his books. And he's just because you can host a really good dinner party at your house doesn't mean that you can have an awesome restaurant, right? And I've had plenty of those people saying, look, I got $1 million and I'm going to invest and I'm going to build a restaurant. And you start talking to some of these people and they look at you and you're like, all right, I'll tell you what. Give me the $1 million, all right? I'm going to give you $500,000 back, and go back to wherever you came from, and you're going to be $500,000 ahead, right? But sometimes it's the reality of it. But then there's the other side of it that now it's well, this person's got passion. There's obviously something in this person to say they're going to make an investment into opening a place, and you try to sit down and you got them do you understand this isn't a 9-to-5 job? Do you understand this isn't a 40, 50-hour work week? Do you understand this? Do you understand that it's a hot, sweaty, crazy night, and most of the people that work with you aren't going to speak English? And, this, and you're going to be dealing with that. And sometimes it's giving them all of that stuff and piling it on their shoulders that you can tell if they're about to collapse in front of you, and then to look at them as a professional and say, look, you don't have it. To me, I would tell you it's not in you. Or go partner up with somebody who's really good. You be the investor and let your money grow for you and sit to the side. So again, it's to me that's really where you become a professional, right? It's not about so much saying, all right, I can plan a wedding, or somebody came to me and I told them where to go for a dress or where to go for a banquet hall, or flowers or whatever. It's really about, all right, I get the idea of what you're going with, and I think that this is what I'm seeing in my vision. Let me tell you my experience based on experiences, right? And I think at the end of the day, that's really what it is. I mean, she's huge with that. Like, she does wedding parties, and she deals with bridezillas, right? And some of these crazy, like, updos, right? Pictures and stuff. And it's like, what did they were even thinking about putting their hair like this? And then when all of a sudden you see the pictures of them, it's like, wow, it's pretty freaking awesome, I never forget, she came on with a picture of a lady one time. This girl had hair that looked like she literally stuck her finger in an electrical socket. It was so curly, it was exploding out, whatever. And then she's like, look at this. This is the girl right here. And it's like, dude, I can't even believe it's the same head of hair. But, you hear her do a consultation, or I'm listening to her over the phone, like in the background, talking to some of these people. And it's, again, I think that it all goes back to that. No matter what industry, no matter what business you're in, no matter what your lifestyle is at home, it's about saying, all right, now for a second, I'm taking all that other stuff and pushing it to the side. And I understand what you're looking for and what you need done. And this is the way you do it. Again, that tunnel vision, and this is what you got to go after and how you're going to do it. And at the end of the day, people pay you for a service, and that's is what we do. At the end of the day, we're with the exception of you, Jordan. You're on the different scale. An administrator.
Not really.
Deals with kids and stuff. You're doing other types, but
we bless you.
Get a regular paycheck,
Benefits.
Benefits. Right? You have 401k too, I bet, don't you? I was just teasing.
I think
the teacher retirement system.
There you go.
Back to what you said, though, that we both kind of are always growing, always learning, always kind of, if we can't do it, we're going to find somebody to learn from that can. We both have really strong mentors in our fields. And we've both been criticized for either following everything they do or giving them kind of props in different times in our life. Leo always shows some respect to the guy he was talking about previously, Tony. And the person who owns my company, his name is Sam. We've been called like ass kissers or brown nosers, or you just say that you're just like trying to be on their good side, but really we both recognized people that were better than us and higher than us. And who do you want to be, like someone who's better than you, or someone, I don't want to be even someone that's equal to me. You want to follow someone better than you. And I think we're both incredibly grateful to those people because they showed us the way. And to this day, either of us could call those people and, hold them very close and ask them anything. And because of how we've treated our careers, they would do anything for us and we would do anything for them. It's like a whole nother set of support that we both have that allows us to educate and to keep learning and keep growing. A lot of hairdressers work on their own, just by themselves in either a rented booth or a small salon. And I have respect for everybody in my industry, as Leo does, for a person that works at Domino's or a person that, works at RPM. It's equal to us. We get it, But I work where I work because I wouldn't be able to grow as much as I have without having a support system with people that have done what I'm doing and beyond. So that's to your point of kind of continuing to educate and continuing to teach others as we're still learning, Yeah,
there's another cool thing too. Like, again, I can speak it from my experience. Is that like, there's that moment too when all of a sudden people who you consider mentors, maybe they don't know you're a mentor or they're a mentor to you, but someone you consider a mentor all of a sudden noticing you. And that's probably it, man. I can tell you about a dozen people, and like the first time, like you put in front of that person for a one-on-one conversation, like I can tell you, like I said, a dozen people where the first conversation I probably sounded like a schoolgirl with, a cracking voice and like, fidgety and nervous and all that. And like looking back at some of those times now, even with those same people, and it's like, there's just people like us, and again, I can name so many people, and just in that same respect, it's like these are all people too. They're just regular people, just like anybody else. Yeah, they've been very successful, or they made a lot of money, or they've got 10 cookbooks, or whatever it might be.
But they were once you too.
Exactly, and I think that on the other side of it, I think that that's one of the things. Like at least people tell me, like I've got probably one of the biggest bakers in the industry, a guy named Peter Reinhardt, who's always been a big. I consider a mentor, and I followed him, and I've studied his books, and things like that. And then all of a sudden, to be able to say, like, I remember my first conversation on the phone with Peter Reinhardt, which was an introduction by another company, saying, "Hey, we want to put you guys on the stage together." And it's like, wait, you want to put me and him together? And then to hear him say, no, you're going to do what you got to do, and I'm going to be the one giving color commentary. And it's like, so not only are you're going to watch me do everything, but that was like the first one. But then all of a sudden, it's like it happens again and again and again. Like another great story, like sitting in his basement right now, a very famous chef in Chicago, a guy named Rick Tramonto. And Rick Tramonto used to own a very famous restaurant called True in Chicago, was married to a Food Network star named was Gail Gand. She was known in the pastry world. And here's somebody, like, I took a date to senior prom at his restaurant and asked for my dad for a small loan to go to his place. And to say that all of a sudden I get a Facebook message one night sitting in his basement, and it's Rick Tramonto saying, "Brother, I'm watching all your stuff and I think you're great and I want to learn from you." And it's like, no, who is this? Like,
we're 37. You're a little bit older than us. You're in your
40s,
mid or young 40s. We always ask ourselves, what would we tell ourselves 10 years ago? Like, if we could go back 10 years, knowing what we know now, like, what should we be doing that we're not, or what shouldn't we worry about, or like, what would you give like advice to people who are married that are younger than us, trying to figure it out, or trying to like achieve their dreams, or trying to decide if the relationship they're in is right for them? Like, what advice would you have for people 10, 15 years younger than
I think mine, going back 10 years, I would say to myself, like, run your own race. Like, do what you got to do. Don't worry about what other people think, because nobody's ever going to think or know what you've got in your head. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses. Don't do all that, because at the end of the day, even if you did keep up with them, you're still going to be miserable, because it's a never-ending cycle that you can never achieve, right? You're setting yourself up for failure. So to me, that would 100%. And I think that it would have relaxed me a lot more. I probably have 10 years left on my life because of all those things over the past 10 years. But I think that, again, going back and looking at it, I think that if I was more chilled out and patient, I think it would have cleared the road for me to do even more. That's probably the easiest one for me. What about you?
I don't know. I feel like use your time wisely, because, life can be short, and don't, we both have large careers. We do what we want to do. We're happy, but we don't sacrifice the things that are important to us to do that. So don't sacrifice your family. Don't sacrifice the things that make you happy. Use your time well.
That's a good one. Yep. Don't waste time.
Where can people find you or learn more about what you're doing?
Mine, I'm all over the place. My handle's Ask Leo Pizza. So Instagram, Facebook, search Ask Leo Pizza, you'll find me. The school is Pizza Culinary Academy. We shortened it up. So Facebook, Instagram, Pizza Culinary Academy. YouTube, there's tons of free content. If you want to learn how to bake and make pizzas, all different kinds, you can search YouTube and find Pizza Culinary Academy there. The school, you can find out more at pizzaculinaryacademy.com. all of our classes, curbside menus, everything is there. We even ship you, small wares, whatever you might want. And again, we've become a really nice resource, and we're continuing to grow it.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And me? My Instagram is just my name, at Melisa Spizzirri. I have two. I have a salon one, at Melisa how does it go? At Melisa Zazu Hinsdale. It's like this, at Melisa Zazu _Hinsdale.
There you go.
And then you could always find all of my stuff at Zazu Salons, which is really easy to find. We do a lot of stuff online.
Mm-hmm.
And when does some of that educational content come out? You guys are working on, you said, a podcast channel?
We're working on a podcast channel that's called Zazu Talk. But I think everything could be accessed through our Instagram page or our website at zazusalons.com.
Awesome.
I really enjoyed this conversation. I know we certainly learned a lot, and my sheet is full of notes, and I'm looking forward to a future part 2, because we asked only a handful of things that we wanted to get into with you guys. So
next time we'll make pizza.
Yes.
We'll do some pizzas.
Sounds like fun.
Thank you so much for coming. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad you had us on.
This was a blast.
Yeah, you guys are...
Sorry we're so long-winded.
No, you guys are top-notch. I mean, you guys are obviously very well-respected in your industries, and you guys are amazing as a couple. And so for us to be able to sit down and just hear about how you make it work, and even though it's not predictable and it's not traditional, that's amazing, because I think it takes balls to do it a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of balls, a lot of hair on the balls.
I'm the balls.
Thanks so much.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Well, that was a fantastic interview. I know that I learned a boatload from talking to both of them, and really enjoyed the privilege of just getting a glimpse into how they're pursuing their careers, but also pursuing one another and facilitating all the incredible things that they're doing with one another.
I loved that we had a list of questions, and just their personalities didn't allow us just to check the questions off the box. We were so involved in their stories and just kind of their insights that it was just totally unscripted, and it felt very natural, and it felt really good.
Yeah, so I hope to talk to them again soon. But there's several takeaways that we had from this conversation, and we're going to kind of talk through and list a couple for you, but there's a lot that I feel like I learned, and I even want to re-listen to this conversation a few times.
Yeah, I can't wait to do that. I think the first thing that I took away from both Leo and Melisa was the idea of running your own race. I think sometimes we get so caught up in trying to be like someone else in our industry, or we follow certain people and we see things that we want to be like, and so we try and kind of do those same things, but the race for all of us is different. The terrain is different. Our bodies are different. The strides that we take, how fast we can go. And I think sometimes we let running somebody else's race hold us back from doing what feels natural for us.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that I connected with was they both talked about where they're at in their careers, how the community of professionals that they're surrounded with is essential. I think they even phrase it like that too. Community is essential, and they're not alone. They're not like the lone man or the lone woman just doing their giftedness, but they are surrounded by other people who are passionate and who are talented, and it's this constant sharing and teaching and giving that really continues to help them get better and to thrive.
Yeah, I was really blown away by that, because I always think that I have to do it on my own and that I don't need others' input, but they seem to get so much more out of their industry and their careers and even their goals when they're sharing what they're doing with other people.
Yeah, it can be tempting to just be the lone wolf and to just try to do what you do independently and reach a certain level, but there's a ceiling to that, and if you really want to get to any sort of mastery level, then it's you have to be codependent on the other people who are striving after that with you.
Just like a marriage.
Just like a marriage.
I think the other thing that really stood out to me was they said that their relationship with each other, with their family, and in their careers isn't without obstacles. And so they said, if you want something bad enough and you're passionate about it and you want to pursue it, then you do the things to get around the obstacles. So instead of seeing the obstacle and backing down or taking it as a no or as a door being closed, they're constantly finding ways to open new doors, to divert around the obstacle, and they're not going to let those things set them back.
Yeah. And the opposite is true too. If you have something that you kind of want, but all you see is obstacles and you can't get around them, then that probably means you don't really want it as much as maybe you imagine you do.
It's a good thought.
One other thing that struck me from early on in the conversation was the role of both teaching and mentoring that they saw. And they could both point to specific people who have mentored them over the years or specific teachers that they've studied under. And they look at what they do as more than just a job and more than just something at a basic level, but they are genuinely pursuing mastery of what they really see as an art. And I think that they are able to have that perspective and reach the level that they have because they see education as just this ongoing concept where they're continually pursuing mentorships from others, but also very eager to teach what they do to other people. And one of the things, they almost made it seem like it was obvious, but they're like, well, of course, like when you teach it, that helps you grow. And you don't always think about it like that. When you teach it, you think of it as the student growing. But when you're able to articulate and to break down what you do in a certain way for someone else to try to understand,
it forces you to refine those skills.
Exactly.
Yeah, and even just their role of, when you say education, in my mind I always just think of formal education, but now we live in a time where it's like self-education. Mm-hmm. So whether it's through books or through podcasts or through interviews, all of those experiences educate us in some way. And so they look for all of those small opportunities to kind of help, breed more invention in their craft, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm. So we'd love for you guys to reach out to us on our website, therelentlesspursuitpodcast.com, or share a comment if you're watching this on YouTube, and let us know what your takeaways are from our conversation with the Spizzirris, and we hope that you are continuing to pursue the fine things in life with us.
Thanks for joining us.